try now. Hi. Give everybody a few minutes to hop online and we'll get started.
How is everyone?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Hungry. I hope it's okay if I eat while we're here.
It depends. Is it crunchy?
It's not. I avoided the tortilla chips for that very reason. That.
What are you snacking on?
Oh, this is dinner. This is like taco beans with salsa, barley, and lettuce and tomato.
So it's like a taco salad.
Ooh.
Is that a little avocado in there?
No, that's iceberg lettuce.
Oh.
I didn't feel like dealing with a bib lettuce that was like loaded with dirt. So I have my window open, but it doesn't show anything. It shows I can open the repository in an external editor or in Finder.
Ah, yeah, that's exactly what you should be looking at. Should have 3 buttons on your screen. Open in VS Code, show in Finder, and view and GitHub.
Cool.
Tika. Tika, are you here? Connecting to audio. Okay, wait a sec. I want to throw this in Zoom chat. I think everybody filled this out yesterday. Tika, I know at the end of class yesterday, we got your GitHub repo up. So I wanted to get a link to that. All right. Patrick. Patrick, I don't believe I got your GitHub link yesterday. Were you able to create a repository?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't here yesterday. I was working. I texted Max.
Okay. Let's see. So I've got some instructions in the slides. Today we're going to work on GitHub Desktop. So do you have a GitHub account already?
I believe I do, yes.
Okay. Are you able to log into it?
Let me see. right here. I'm already logged into it.
Okay, great. Well, let's just do this real quick. Can you go and up in the top right, do you see a plus?
Yes,
Can you click on that and hit new repository?
new repository. Yep. Okay,
And then can you share your screen?
share my screen. Yes.
And then in the repository name, type in Patrick Oswald 319 .github.io.
Got what?
IO, the letters I and O. Perfect. And then check the box, add a README file down below. Okay, and then scroll down to the bottom, create repository. Perfect. And then let's see. 319. And then also in some browser window, go and Google GitHub desktop. Yep. And then scroll down a little bit,
Oh, not
bunch of
there.
ads. Yeah. Installation.
Oh, this one?
Up a little bit, see installation. It's the second link.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Visit the download page. Oh, sorry, I sent you to the wrong thing. Click on download page for GitHub desktop.
Oh, right here.
It is right here.
Oh, okay.
And then click on this because you want the Apple Silicon version. Cool. Yep. Open that. Drag that into the applications folder. And then, yep, open it. GitHub desktop. Yep, all good. Sign in. Authorize, yep. Nice. You're using the manage passwords. It's excellent. Okay, yep, open.
Hell yeah, I forget every time.
Yeah, who has time to remember passwords? Flip this from the silly email to your actual email. So click on the drop down. Yep. Perfect. Finish. And then this right here, click on that. Clone,
Clone.
clone one more time. Cool. You're all cut up.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tika, are you there yet?
No. Hold on. I hate this stupid thing. Hold on. I don't know how to get it back.
I'll kick you out.
Okay, there we go. I'm like, I don't know how to get it back to this grade.
All right. So before we jump in today, the first thing that I want to share is the outline for today. I'm going to throw that into chat. I think I have everybody's row filled out, but here is the other doc, the link to all the GitHub repos. If you haven't filled it out, please do fill it out. And next, I'm going to turn this around and ask all of you, does anybody have questions for me from yesterday? I know we covered quite a bunch of different things, but just want to take a couple minutes at the beginning and ask, is there anything that you have questions about? Thoughts, concerns before we jump in? Feelings, opinions?
I just had a quick question. If you're going to be doing a second repository, you should always use different names for each repository.
Yes.
So like if you have your name and then maybe put the initials of the project you're working on next to it and then the github.io to be able to tell them apart, or do you need a completely separate name?
So you can call your repository whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about it colliding with other users either. So like you could have a repository called app, or you could have a repository called project, and that would be totally legal. So you can call your repository whatever you want. The reason why we're calling this repository that we built in class yesterday, the reason why we're calling it username.github.io, the reason why we're doing that very special name for the repository is because we're about to do some deployments, and in order to deploy, your project has to be named that very specific format. But you're totally right. You can name your repository whatever. You can use the initials. You can call your other repositories whatever you'd like.
Could you define commit again, please? Like,
Yeah, totally. And we have some slides that go a little bit deeper into the terminology, but just briefly, I don't want to talk a whole lot about what it is. I want to show you because I think it makes more sense when you see it. But let me share my screen. I'm going to show you one of the projects I've worked on called Librarian. And you'll see that this project has 157 commits in it. And what each of those commits mean is they're just snapshots that I've taken at different points in time. A commit is a bundle of changes that you've made. When you commit and push, what you're doing is you're taking a snapshot of the code and you're pushing it up to GitHub, so GitHub saves your progress. So kind of like a video game, when you're taking, when you're saving your progress in the game, think of the commits as kind of the same thing in that analogy. But so this project has a bunch of commits, right? And at any point in time, I can go and look at one of these individual commits. So I'm going to click on this one. And we could see that on April 14th, I changed one line of code and I was editing the run command for my server and adding some access file error log file flags. But I can also go and look at other commits. Like for example, I did some UI work on this and I changed a whole bunch of files. So this commit is pretty big. It has a lot of different things that I changed in that snapshot. So this is kind of a visual representation of what a commit is. A commit is a special bundle of changes that you've made. And you don't have to, you don't really need to think a whole lot about the commit necessarily. What I want to show in class today is making commits is really easy and really simple. You are literally just writing your code and hitting save, and then writing code and hitting save. That's effectively what committing is doing. Good question. Other questions about what we've covered so far? Okay. All right, so let's jump into it. Where we left off yesterday, we had just gotten done with uploading, or sorry, getting GitHub desktop set up. So this is the slide we were on, slide 25. Just so everybody's at the same page, you should have GitHub desktop open, and you should have a screen that kind of looks something like this. So up here in the top left, you should see your current repository. It should be your username.github.io, and then you should see a screen kind of like this. So what I want all of us to do today is we're going to practice making a couple of commits. And the first thing that I would like people to do is to get their text editors ready, so Visual Studio Code. And the workflow that I'd like you to start practicing when you're writing your code is to come into GitHub Desktop first when you're planning on making some changes to your portfolio. Come into GitHub Desktop first, open in Visual Studio Code, and then do your coding through the window that you opened up in GitHub Desktop. Okay. So instead of opening up VS Code and then navigating on your desktop to wherever your code is, instead I want you to start practicing starting from GitHub Desktop, going into VS Code, doing your coding from there. Okay.
So like I have some past projects we've been doing that I'm working on. So upload all that stuff on GitHub and then get into that habit of going into VS Code from GitHub. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think for the people that want to get the most out of this class, and the one that I'm going to teach in to get the most out of this class, and the one that I'm going to teach in a couple of months in February, you need to get into the habit of doing your development on GitHub. So that means whatever you're working on, getting into the habit of creating a repository for it, pushing that up to GitHub and working from GitHub.
Okay.
I can't think of any downsides to getting into that habit now. Specifically, there's the benefits of having your code available to share with others, especially to share with TAs and instructors, just by sharing a link, as opposed to if you want to share something and get help. What you've been having to do right now is either email snippets around or copy and paste snippets, or sharing your screen, that sort of thing. So I really can't think of any downsides. And if you can try to get into the habit of doing what I'm showing you.
My next question is, how do we pick? Like, I only have the one we just created, but if I had multiple ones, would they all just pop up and I can open it into VS Code? Like, pick the one I want?
Yeah. So if you had another repository, you could open that up. We will jump into that later today. We'll add another repository so you can see what that looks like. Okay. So for the first part of class today, we're going to practice doing a commit. And I just want to show people, because we kind of went through this quickly yesterday, and I want people to feel comfortable with this. Now that you have VS Code open, because you opened up VS Code through GitHub Desktop, you are the code that you're working on is being watched by Git. So if you make any change to your code, so if I changed, let's say, I changed this styles.css back to a style, any change that I make, GitHub Desktop is going to see in the background. So I want people to just go in, make some kind of small change to their code that they have open, make some kind of small change, hit save, make sure that you save, and then flip back to GitHub Desktop, and just make sure that you see GitHub Desktop is picking up your changes.
So I made the change.
Mhm.
But now, like in my other window, where it shows the repository and those three menu options, am I supposed to be seeing that there?
Yes, those three buttons should disappear, and you should see a screen kind of like this. Now go back to your VS Code. Make sure you hit save. Did you hit save?
I did.
Okay, and flip back to GitHub Desktop.
Uh-huh.
Still not seeing anything?
Oh, it refreshed. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, it can kind of depend, especially if you're working on a really big project. Sometimes it could take a second or two for those changes, but most of the time it should be instantaneous. Is it Jordan, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me stop sharing mine.
Okay, so I go to open in Visual Studio Code, and then this comes up.
Oh, yeah, so don't click on that. Is anybody else seeing this? Anybody else getting this message, get not found? Okay, so if anybody else is seeing this message, we have to install Git. So open up the terminal program. So Spotlight is Command and Spacebar, and type in terminal. Enter. Yep.
Oh,
Then type out wherever that opened up in. Cool. And then type out Git and hit enter. And hit install. Yep. Yep. Yeah, this will take a minute. A couple people were hitting this at the end of class yesterday. It didn't take a whole lot. It says a ridiculous amount of time, but it shouldn't take that long.
yeah, no, it's almost done. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else having problems getting seeing what I've got shown on my screen? You shouldn't see exactly what I have here, but should be able to make some kind of changes and have it show. Patrick.
I'm having trouble getting into your version.
Okay,
Your Git.
let me stop.
hub.
Let me stop sharing. Oh, right. We just made the repository, so you don't have any code in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this around
Okay.
on the class. What should we do? Does anybody have any idea what we should do here, or what the
Load
next steps would be?
Load his files.
Yeah, we need to grab some portfolio code. So Patrick, what would you say is the most what HTML and CSS do you have that you're the most proud of, or that you like, that you've hacked on the most?
Oh goodness, I don't know.
Like, have you been hacking on the portfolio, or have you been working on something else?
What right now? I've just been working on the code for my website thing I'm supposed to do.
Okay, show me the website thing.
Okay. Oh, I only have the wireframe.
Do you have any HTML or CSS for it?
Yeah, here. Hold on. You want me to just use my project, this one?
Whatever you got, whatever HTML and CSS you're most recently familiar with.
I have these two.
Okay, cool. All right, so leave this window right here. And then does anybody know how we could get that code into GitHub desktop?
Hey, Nate, before we do that, I have a quick question. His file is called index.com. Is that okay, or should it be HTML?
Good catch. Is that index.com? Is that valid HTML? No. Or sorry, is the contents of index.com valid HTML? Patrick, do you know?
Say that again, I didn't hear you.
What's inside index.com?
Oh, this, wait, can I, or do I have to take this and drag it?
So first go back and rename index.com to index.html.
Oh.
Nice. Okay. Yep. Use HTML.
Oh, my bad, sorry.
You're good. Then
Yep.
right click it and then let's see if we can like open it with text edit is fine. Anything really. So these are notes. Okay. So okay. Do you have any other HTML and CSS that you've been working on?
Use one of the HTML from any other day that we've done. With the index and the CSS file.
Oh,
Yeah,
right click that one. Let's see what's in it.
same thing.
Okay. This doesn't look like HTML. Or is it? Wait.
Well, it
right,
is.
right,
Look,
Text
I
edit.
noticed I had to do this. So like I click here, I
Uh-huh.
open window, and then I take these and I drag or hold on. Yeah.
What's in the index HTML?
Keyboard day, week 4, day 3.
Okay, cool. So you do have
Yeah, see,
HTML. Great.
It's like I do it a different way. My bad.
It's text edit is displaying it as a that's strange. All right. So I'm going to turn this around on folks in the class. How would we get these files, the index.html and styles.css? How would we get this into GitHub?
Drag it into the not the desktop, but like the github.com, like we did yesterday.
We could do that. That would be one way of doing it. There is another easier way. See, we know.
Do you drag it into GitHub desktop then?
Yeah, exactly. So click on GitHub desktop. You see it behind you. And then there's a show in Finder button. It's the middle one right here.
Oh.
Yep. Okay. So keep this window open. This represents your code on GitHub,
Okay.
and then drag from the other window into the HTML and CSS that you want to bring.
You said drag this?
No. So that's the destination that you're just hovering over. Grab. Yep. Grab from that other window and drag it into there. So in D2. Yep. Go inside of D2.
Right there.
No, sorry. Back up. Release. Click into D2.
Oh, click into it. Okay.
Yep. Grab those two files and drag them over.
Okay. Hate my keyboard or my touchpad. Jesus.
Yeah, it's the forced touch.
Yes, it's
Nonsense.
sticky. Like it's like oh my goodness.
You can just copy it. So right click and then copy and then it goes.
Perfect.
Nice. Okay, behind you, if you click on GitHub desktop, it's saying, oh, cool, you're adding
Oh,
two
nice.
brand new files. So make a commit. To make a commit, you type in a message here describing whatever the changes are. I've just tried to highlight this box. So say something like, I don't know, adding initial files inside of the
Right here?
summary. Yep. Adding initial files. Okay, and then click commit to main and push. So send it up to GitHub. Cool, you're all caught up. So now you've got files. Now you can make
Nice.
changes like the rest of us. So let
Okay.
me
Go.
take over. Other people got questions?
Oops, sorry. There we go.
Everybody able to get something kind of like this, able to make some changes? Okay. All right. I'm going to say updating my title. Commit, push. All right. So we're going to do a quick exercise. The goal of this exercise is to just get familiar with making commits. So what I would like everybody to do is I would like everybody to update their index.html because everybody should have an index.html in their GitHub repo. right? Everybody has at least an index.html. They may not have any PNGs or additional HTML, but everybody at least has a index.html, right? So I would like you to, somewhere on your index.html, I'd like you to create a div and put the word pineapple in the div. Then commit it and push it.
Hey, Nate, you said pineapple? In the
Pineapple.
div?
A div with the
Okay.
word pineapple in it, please.
You said you wanted us to commit it?
Commit and push it, please.
And just to confirm, that was on an HTML, correct? Not CS, not the style sheet?
In the index.html, yes, not in the style sheet.
Okay, perfect.
I'm going to
And
update this.
Committing it is saving and pushing is different. How?
Because good question. So you can make commits on your machine. You can make as many commits as you want on your machine, and they will live on your Mac until you push it. Pushing is the act of taking all of the commits, or a single commit if that's all you've done, and taking it from your Mac and pushing it up to GitHub. They're decoupled a little bit because the two actions are decoupled a little bit because of the mechanics of how Git works. But committing is to take that snapshot. Pushing is to send the snapshot up to the cloud.
So do you push by saying commit
Oh,
to
I have
main,
to
or
send.
is it just automatic?
You push by clicking that blue button that you see. So after you make the commit and it says push to origin or push to main.
Yeah, I see commit to main. I don't see push to main.
Is that the terminology that it uses? Let me make an edit really quick. Open in VS Code, intros. Make a change, come back, updating to plural. So I'm clicking commit to main. When I click commit to main, all it's going to do is it's going to take a snapshot on my computer. So when I hit commit to main, snapshot done. Now it's still on my Mac, which means that if I go and click view on GitHub, notice how the latest commit was 4 minutes ago. So me taking that commit, me pressing that button, did not send that snapshot up to GitHub. It's only once I click the push origin and send my commit up to GitHub that now I can refresh here and see it says updated to plural 26 seconds ago.
Okay, got you.
And just to kind of tack on to Schneider's question, I guess, are origin and main used like interchangeably? Because like you were saying, like push to main, but the button says like push origin, which is that's what I thought Schneider was asking, and I was curious myself.
Yeah, we're not going to cover that this week, but no, they aren't used interchangeably. Origin, they're not used interchangeably, and I apologize if that was if that was confusing. When you see origin, you should think GitHub. When you see main, Latonia, what's the analogy for main?
It's just a branch, and we haven't really gotten into branch. So think of it as
Right.
like the house that it's living in on GitHub. So origin is the name for GitHub in this particular platform, it would be like them referencing you by your first name. And then main would be where it's living in that place. Sometimes you'll see master. I think one person had that issue yesterday. And so we got rid of that branch. So they would only have main. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Nate, can I jump in real quick? Can you create a
please.
breakout room for myself and Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. Let
Thanks.
me, actually, can I make you co-host? Could you self-service?
Yes, thanks.
So when you commit, and rather when you push the change, and I'm looking at my history, and I see that I only typed in pineapple for the comment or whatever, and I see that it's there now. So is that supposed to happen? Like if you go on the history tab, like the it looks like the text changed, I guess.
Oh, talking about this history, these commits over here on the side, this stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You should see it changed over there. Yep. And for the rest of class, we'll look at the history tab here in a minute. There's some stuff to point out there. Okay, so I'm looking across everybody's repo. It looks like a lot of people have already been able to push up Pineapple. I'm just gonna pick on a couple people here and there just to make sure that we're all able to do this.
I
I'm
have
gonna
a
pick on.
question. I have a
Go ahead.
question. So I actually changed the word. There was a word called sponsors. I changed the word sponsors to pineapple, but
Okay.
it wasn't updating. Like it is not showing whether I changed the word. So I was just wondering.
It according to my script, it looks like you totally were able to update it. I'm just gonna click on your commit. Yeah, you changed it from pineapple to pineapples. So it looks like you've made a couple commits.
No. Actually, there was in my old in my old file, I had the word sponsors. I just deleted it and changed with pineapple. And then I changed to pineapples, but I'm not changing the first change, which I did with sponsors to pineapple. I am not changing that change. So I was just
Okay.
wondering, yeah.
Yeah, no, it looks exactly like what you just said. You changed sponsors to pineapple. Then if I come back and look at the next commit, you changed pineapple to pineapple soup. So it looks like you did exactly what you just described. Yeah. Great job. Okay, I'm gonna pick on a couple people here. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm good. I can't necessarily follow along at the moment. There's a couple of things I still need to catch up on, but I'm just observing.
Okay. Don't if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I don't want you to feel like we're moving too fast. Okay. And then Ayub, how are you doing? Are you there, Ayub? All right. Is Naj in here? No. Okay. Therese, you got yours updated. Very nice. Who is Neon Grid? Oh, Jordan. Jordan is in the breakout room. All right. Snyder looking good. Jennifer looking good. Karen, how are you doing?
I thought I was doing okay. I don't do you not see the update, or maybe did I do something wrong, or
So we're looking for an index.html in the top of your GitHub repo. It looks like you have a folder in the top of your repo.
oh wait a minute. So
Do you have some HTML and CSS that you're working on?
I have the index.html in my VS Code.
Right. So let's take a second and stop here.
Okay.
Do you mind sharing your screen?
Sure. Oh, whoops.
I like your VS Code. All right. So GitHub desktop looks right. Open in VS Code. You've got that open, and then hit save over on VS Code. What happens there? Or just change pineapple to pineapples. Add an S to the end of pineapple.
Okay.
Okay, yep, hit save. Come back to GitHub desktop, so click on the other. Okay, so we're not seeing any changes. So it's acting as if it's acting as if you're not making any changes to the code. So just to make sure, go ahead and close the VS Code on the left with Command Q, or yeah, that works too. Yep. And then back over on VS Code, or sorry, back on GitHub desktop, click open in VS Code, click that button.
Karen, can I ask, did you save the commit?
I don't know.
You saved it, Command S, right?
I saved it with Command S, yes.
And then did you go to your window, your GitHub window, and in the bottom left corner, type in a description and then hit commit to main?
I did not.
Well, so hit OK there. And then notice over here on the left, what you see in VS Code is different than what you saw before, right? You had an index.html before.
Right.
What we want is to add the index.html here. I think you had the wrong VS Code window open.
I see. I created a folder and then I created a file. So I probably should delete the folder, correct? Okay, I see. So I'll delete the folder later on.
Yeah, for now, go ahead and create a new file, call it index.html. Yep. And then do what you did before in index.html. Give us a div tag. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. And then save. Now notice, because you opened that VS Code, because you opened that using the button in GitHub desktop, click on the GitHub desktop window. Here, right?
Okay.
So notice how it's picked up the change.
Okay. Okay.
So be very careful when you are going to code. First, start by going into GitHub desktop, then open your VS Code window through GitHub desktop.
I see. Okay. Okay. Not the other way around, or not like, I guess, simultaneously, maybe.
Right. I'm throwing one extra step now into your dev workflow. Okay, now let's make the commit. So down in the bottom left, let's make that commit message. Or you can just leave it. Yeah, you can click commit to main.
Okay.
And skip it. Okay, and then push. So now you sent that commit up to GitHub.
Okay.
You're all caught up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I believe that's it. So we've got everybody found. We've got a couple people that are still working on it. And now we have yours is found. Perfect. Very nice. Great job. Great job, everybody. All right, I'm going to throw one more out. Horseshoe. Go from pineapple to horseshoe, please. Do one more. Keep you on your toes. Oh, Therese, you win. Ding, ding, ding. You win. First place.
Yay.
First place. If I had something to give you, I would give it to you. All right, who's coming in second place? Let's see. Oh, Arizona, you're very close. Oh, there's a lot of people coming in second place. Solid Serpent. Yeah, it's my script goes iteratively. If I had made it concurrent, then I would have had a more accurate second place. Wow, a lot of people coming in third. Very nice.
How
Very
did you
nice.
do that? What the heck? Like, how are you keeping track of all this?
I literally took everything that you guys put into the spreadsheet.
Uh-huh.
I made it into an array, and all I'm doing is launching little browser requests to go and load your index.html.
How's it saying I'm not found? I just pushed it to origin.
Ooh, let's see.
Unless I
Push 1 minute ago. Let's see. Oh,
I spelled it wrong. Oops.
all right. I think with that, this is a good spot to take a break, stretch, water, snack. 20 minutes back at 6:36. Does that work for people? Very nice. All right, see everybody in 20 minutes.
Okay, can I just ask you a question first, Nathan?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did those steps. I changed it to horseshoe. I saved it. It fetched the origin. I saw the changes. I went down to the corner. I committed to main and I pushed it. Now I don't see on the website where the heck that is.
Okay, let me pause recording. There we go. Has anybody heard of a Raspberry Pi? Anybody familiar with?
Yeah, Max mentioned it once.
Anybody else heard of Raspberry Pis?
I have.
No? Okay. Oh, okay. Do you have one?
No. I mess with, like streaming stuff. Like I mess with Kodi, so I use NVIDIA Shield. But like I know
Oh,
Raspberry Pi is one of the devices that people use to put their Kodi and their other APKs on.
yeah. NVIDIA Shield, the best at in-home streaming from device to device, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I have the 500 gig one.
That has definitely been something that I've been interested in trying out. Let me turn off my background so you could actually see this. Okay, this is a Raspberry Pi. So what you get with this board right here, this is a full computer. So this is a quad core. So it has 4 cores on the CPU. They come in different models, but this one is an 8 gig. So 8 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, this is essentially the same power as a Chromebook, but it has an Ethernet jack, it has Wi-Fi, and it has 4 USB ports. The newer ones have USB-C. This one is one of the older ones, so it has an HDMI right there. And then it has, the newer ones are USB-C, but this is one of the older ones, and this one has the USB-B micro plug. But, and this is what, $40? Dirt cheap.
So can you just plug that into a power adapter and then plug in a monitor?
Exactly. Yep. Boots right up.
That's very cool.
Oh, and the other pretty neat thing is on the back, there is a little tray right here that everybody's probably familiar with. That's a micro SD. So in your desktop and on your laptop, you're used to SSDs and hard disk drives. On the Raspberry Pi, the disk drive or the disk is just a little micro SD card.
That's amazing. And can you swap that SD card out for larger ones?
Sure can. Yeah, if you want a huge disk drive on your computer, you can throw a 64 gig or a 128 or whatever you want with it.
Where do you get that?
Yeah, Raspberry Pis are really cool. And if you want to talk more about them, come to office hours this weekend because I will show you my server rack, which is a cluster of these computers that are hanging in a rack. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, come hang out on for office hours.
That sounds so cool.
Okay. Thank you all for indulging me in the pineapples and horseshoe exercise. Hopefully people are kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable with making commits and pushing them up to GitHub. The slides have the same thing that we've been talking about, so they're here for your reference if you want to go back and check out what we've done. But just as a recap, the workflow that I'm trying to get people in the habit of is start with opening GitHub Desktop, open VS Code, make some changes, and make sure that you remember to save. Otherwise, they won't show up in GitHub Desktop or they won't get picked up instantly in GitHub Desktop. But make some changes, work on your code, then go back to GitHub Desktop and then make a commit describing the changes that you've made, and then click push origin.
So if you make multiple changes before you push the origin, you would just put down a description of the commit.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part, what you said.
If you made a lot of changes before you push the origin, you would just put down the description and then push it to origin?
It's up to you.
Okay.
There is no hard rule. I think with experience, you'll kind of learn how often to commit and how many changes to put into a commit. But there is really no rule. It's kind of dependent on what you're comfortable with. Like for me, I tend to make really large commits with lots of changes in them because I don't like to constantly flip back. I like to code and focus on coding for a while, and then I'll go back and make a commit and push. Some people like making lots of little tiny commits with lots of little changes, just because they like being able to go back in time and kind of having that fine grain history. But there is no hard rule to that. It's entirely up to personal preference. Hopefully that answers your question. Was that close?
It does, because I wasn't trying to commit every little detail and then go back and change something, you know? So I was wondering if there's like an order to it.
Yes. Do not do what we've done in class so far. Do not make one word changes or add one tag and then feel like you need to flip back and go. I'm talking, you can do things like open up VS Code and start refactoring code. Like, for example, I want to change the position of cards. So I will take this div, move it below this other card, and then open this up in the browser, make sure that the card ordering looks correct. Maybe I'll switch this up to like a 12 instead of a 6-column grid. Hit save, that sort of thing. Work on your code, do what it is you want to do, and then briefly hop back to GitHub Desktop. Yeah, I made these changes, that looks good. Saving my progress on the grid refactor. Latoni, do you want to weigh in here?
So do you like, I see you just put in the summary. Is the description just optional too?
Yeah, I think it's also down to style. Like, remember, these boxes are here for you, and what you put in the boxes are totally there for you. I have never in my professional experience needed to write in this extended description box. I've only ever written short descriptions in the top box.
Okay.
But Latoni, do you want to weigh in on your personal style for how you like to do commits?
Yep, I usually will commit once I feel like I've done like a set. Like if I was working on a button, maybe I'll do that whole button and then I'll commit. I tend to not push everything right away because you can actually just kind of stack your commits and then push them later. That way my flow can be a little quicker. I will work in multiple files and do different stuff, but then if I do that, I'll use the source control and in VS Code so I can see the changes because it'll show you the changes in the file. And that can kind of jog my memory around what I did, but I always just use the summary, the top box, and I'll just kind of do like an overview of what I did in there. Just making sure there's some sort of keywords that'll trigger my mind if I do have to go back. to revert to an earlier file.
I don't know what a source control is, but I got the gist.
Okay, I'm sure you'll see it
This-
at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, source control, is that an extension? Or
No,
is
no,
that
no,
part?
source control, when in VS Code, whose screen is this? Nate, this your screen? Yeah, just click on the over there, yeah, that right there. This shows you, you see how it says commit?
Mhm.
It looks very similar to what you're doing in GitHub desktop. Yep, so now it's in here. If you click on that file, it's going to show you just how GitHub desktop does. It's going to show you the changes.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I can just, and if you look at the mini map, you can see where it even tells you, it gives you like a clue of where the change is.
Mhm.
I'll look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's when I did this. And then I can just like kind of do a bunch of commits at the same time. So, but it's a personal style. Once you get going, you'll know what feels good to you. If you care about having like the really detailed single commits, or if you're like, no, let's just do a bunch of stuff and get it in there. It'll feel good to you. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. It definitely will feel good. And I like your approach, Latonia, of working on a discrete task as part of a commit. I tend to do the same thing too, where each of my commits will be focused towards a goal. And I think most people tend to like to work that way anyways. You know, if you've got a project where you're given a set of tasks, trying to constrain those commits to each of those tasks does really help a lot. Yeah. It does really feel good to knock out those commits, especially if you make a series of commits and you kind of have them stacked up and you push them all up. It's, I don't know, maybe the OCD or something that takes over. Okay. So just keep in mind, that's the workflow that I'm trying to get people in the habit of. Now, I do have to say that after this week, you're going to go back to Max, and you might be tempted to say, okay, that was cool, the things that we learned with Nathan for that 1 week, but I really, really encourage you to try to give this workflow a chance and try to do as much of your work as you can possibly do through GitHub, because this is something that on the job that I personally use Git every single day. There is not a day that goes by as a software engineer where I don't use Git. Latonia, how about yourself? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I definitely use it every day. There's times where I started a project and I was so focused on, oh, I got to get this done and this done. And then at some point, a sense of panic popped in. So I was like, oh, no, I got to protect my code. So then I have the backup, set up my repo, get my stream set up. Upstream just means like you're pushing from your local computer to origin, which we already said is GitHub. So I definitely use it every day, because once you get going, you're going to want to make sure you do not lose your code.
Right.
So.
And then I just have a couple of pictures on here to illustrate that, but you all have been here, so don't need to watch that right now. But just as a reminder, make sure that you're committing and pushing often. It's just nice to build it in as a muscle memory. Sometimes I'll just always commit and push before I get up and take a stretch and take a break. All right, so we've already gone through the exercise for that with the pineapple and horseshoe. So let's talk about some other usages for Git. So thus far, we've kind of talked about Git as being this mechanism for taking snapshots of your code, backing them up, but Git is a whole lot more than that. And there's a whole social aspect to Git, working on other people's code and using other people's code that we haven't touched on yet. So what I want to talk about is dealing with multiple repositories, multiple repos. So far, we've dealt with one, our portfolio repo, but we can work with multiple repositories. And here's how you would do it. So for example, let's look at Max's example portfolio repo. So if we go to github.com, I'll post this link here in a second in chat. If we go to github.com, Max Matthews example portfolio, this is where Max wrote the code that you have seen for for the portfolio. So for example, if I click on index.html, you'll see this is the code that I stole from him that I've been using so far. Max Matthews, full stack developer, hacker, mentor, entrepreneur, all around badass. So this should be familiar to everyone. So this is Max's repo that he's been using to write that portfolio example. Now let's say that I wanted to get this code down on my and pull it down onto my machine. Maybe I wanted to do what I did earlier in the class. Maybe I wanted to steal all of this code and use it as the foundation for my portfolio. Well, because it's a repository, I can pull it down onto my machine using GitHub Desktop. And let me show you how to do that. So in GitHub Desktop, up here on the top left, there is this picker, this current repository picker. And if you click on this, it will show you a list of all the repositories that you have downloaded from github.com onto your machine. And you can click add, clone repository, clone meaning to just pull down from the internet. And here in this box, we will paste the URL that I just put in chat. So I'm going to go grab this, come back down here. And then I'm going to hit clone. And you'll see that I now have a copy of Max Matthews' example portfolio on my computer. So if I click on that, I'm now inside the context of his example portfolio. I will click on the Open in VS Code just to see what the code looks like. And sure enough, here is Max's code. If I click on index.html, you can see the title is Max Matthews. This is his code. Max Matthews, full stack developer. So let me show that one more time. I'm going to pick somebody else at random.
So you could essentially use other people's code as templates.
For whatever you want. So I'm going to pick on Alba. I'm going to grab the link to your code, Alba. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on my repo picker, and I'm going to add your repo and clone it down to my machine. So I'm going to hit clone repository, clone. I'm downloading it now. Cool. Now I'm going to click on. So now I have your repo selected, Alba. I'm going to click open in VS Code. Boom. Now I'm working on Alba's code. Alba, I'm going to change your code. I'm going to say this is now Nathan's portfolio. So now I'm working on somebody else's code. It's that easy. You can, if this is one of the awesome parts of GitHub is that if you want to get started on working on someone else's project or you want to help out on someone else's code, it's just that quick and that easy to get set up and started working on other people's code. Now, I do want to point out, just like this message that you see down here in the bottom corner, it says that I don't have write access to diaz1080.github.io. And it's asking me if I want to create a fork, which we haven't talked about forks yet. But just because I can clone down the code doesn't mean that I have the permissions to push commits to that code, push my commits to that repo. So far, we've had the ability to push our commits from our computer to GitHub. We've had that ability because we own those repositories. But just because I'm able to clone someone's repo doesn't mean I have access to push. It doesn't mean that it belongs to me or that I own it. So I can create commits, but if I were to create commits on Alba's repo because I don't own it, when I go to push, it's going to give me an error. Okay. Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, so it'll save, however, so then she could go back into it and work on it if you were collaborating.
Yeah, so if we were collaborating and we can, depending on how much time we have this week, we might be able to squeeze some of that in. But there's a concept on GitHub called pull requests. And it's where people that don't have access, don't own the repo. It's where those people can create suggestions, can create those commits and suggest to the person that owns the repo. They can suggest those changes, and the person that owns the repo can then decide to accept those changes. And we might have time to talk about that later this week, but it's a really cool process that GitHub allows you to do called pull requests. And if people are interested, please feel free to take a look at that. But
You can also like,
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
You
go,
can,
please.
like, accept or deny, like, if somebody were to merge your code, right? Like if somebody else wants to merge their code with yours, do you accept or deny that through the pushing or what?
Not through the pushing, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because this kind of gets into a little bit more advanced stuff. But I will show an example of it. So we talked about a really popular project on GitHub called Express.js. If we look at it, Express.js has this tab called pull requests. And pull requests are people trying to push code into that project. So there's about 52 people right now, or rather 52 pull requests that are open. And let's go take a look at one. So let's see. So this person right here, this Lock3D, is trying to suggest this piece of code, and we can go and take a look at it. They are trying to suggest all of these changes. And so the people that maintain this repository, they are currently having this conversation about these changes. And so right now, for example, this person that's reviewing it is asking them to change a line of code. So they're actually going back and forth on this and having a discussion about the type of commit that the person was suggesting, and they're talking about changing it up to make it work. So really neat. There's this whole social aspect that people are able to communicate and share code and have these discussions, and GitHub allows you to do that because GitHub lets people put comments. Like, for example, if I wanted to suggest here that he change, please replace updated at with modified at. So I could leave a comment here and ask him to change something for his code. But we're probably not going to have time. We may this week, but that's pull requests, and they're extremely cool.
I have another question.
Yeah.
About security. So is it as simple as choosing public versus private if you don't want people pulling or like getting your code and working on it?
It is. So if you make it public, that means anybody can clone your code, get a copy of your code. If you make it private, then people can't get a copy of your code. They can't clone it down because it won't be accessible to everyone.
Right.
And then regardless of whether it's public or private, regardless, the only person that can push code is the person that owns the repo. So even if your repo is public, that doesn't mean that people are able to push code. That means they're able to just read code. If anybody wants to change your code in your repository, they have to open a pull request, that thing that we just looked at. They have to suggest the changes, and then the person that owns it will either accept it or decline those changes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Reminder, why are we backing up with Git again? Because we're working on computers that could explode at any point in time, and computers that could get Gatorade spilled on them. I keep bringing up the Gatorade. It's like something has happened to me in my past. I can't forget. All right, let's talk about recovering files. So I've talked a little bit about the benefits of backing your code up on Git, but let's talk about things that are a little bit more practical. So, or practical, but also things that I've seen happen during the cohort, and ways that Git will help save your butt. So there's really two situations you can run into where you accidentally lose some files, and Git can help you in both of these situations. So the first situation that you could find yourself in is you're working on some code and you accidentally delete the files underneath. So let's say that you're working in Finder, and for some reason, this has happened. So I'm not making this up, but let's say for some reason the files that you find in Finder somehow end up in the trash or somehow end up getting deleted. Okay, so let's create that situation real quick. Let me stop running this program. Open up GitHub Desktop. Right now, I'm currently on Albus Code, and I don't want to be on Albus Code anymore. I'm going to switch back to my portfolio. Okay. So let me open up Finder and show you what could happen. Here we go. Show in Finder. All right, so I'm looking at the files on my computer right here. Let's say that I delete index.html. I move it to trash. And then let's say that I empty my trash. Okay, what do I do now?
You go into GitHub and you could go to one of your commits and get it back that way. Yeah.
I could, yep. So I could go to GitHub. I could go to my portfolio. Sure enough, I still have an index.html up here. So I could click on that. I could grab the contents of all of this, copy it, and then I could come back to VS Code, close this because that's these are not the right windows, close all that, come back to GitHub Desktop, open up in VS Code, there we go. Index.html doesn't exist. I could create index.html, paste all that in. Cool, GitHub saved my butt. There's an even easier way of doing that. So I'm going to delete this again. Now, if I come back to GitHub Desktop, notice that it's detected that this file is missing. If I wanted to get this file back, I don't need to go to GitHub. I don't need to do anything. If I don't like what is happening in GitHub Desktop, let's say there's a change that I don't like for example, there's this DS store and this index.html. If I don't like what's going on, I can right click and hit discard changes. I'm going to discard the change to delete the index.html. I'm going to discard removing this file. Click discard. Now I'm going to go look back in VS Code, and there it is. Index.html is still there.
So if you're going to do it the commit way, that'll just pull up the last saved file or whatever.
Right, from the last snapshot that you took. Good point. So if I didn't make a commit, let's go through that example real quick. So let's say that I'm going from Nathan Evans to Nathan James Evans. Okay, so I've been working on my code, but I haven't made a commit. And then I accidentally, let's say, delete. Okay, GitHub Desktop notices that index.html is deleted. So I'm going to discard changes because I don't want this file to get deleted. I'm going to discard the change that is erasing this file. Come back, index.html just got recreated, but it's missing the edit that I made. And that's because when you undo those changes, when you discard the changes, it's reverting it back to the last snapshot that you took. So this is kind of a good reason to make commits fairly frequently, just as ways to make checkpoints and save the progress in your code. Okay, any other questions?
Slight question. That can apply to the CSS too, like the style page.
It can apply to anything. I'll delete this PNG. I'll delete style.css. I'll delete weather app.png. I'll delete everything. It's all gone. I'm going to go back to GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop, notice that all these files are missing. I've made a change where I deleted all these files. Now I can select all of them, right click, discard, discard. I don't want these changes. I'm going to discard all of them. My files are back.
Now, can I just hear again what happens if you don't make a commit?
Yeah. So the situation we are talking about is, let's say, let's make this a real world example. I am going to go to Ruby on Finder. So I'm going to open this up. All right, Nathan Evans. I'm going to inspect. Let's change this up. I don't want this to be an H1. I'm gonna flip this to being an H2. Yeah, I kind of want it to be around the same size. I really don't like this this color. It's kind of bleeding into the back, and you can't sort of pick out the words that you see on the screen right there. So let's talk about changing the color to white. Kind of stands out a little bit more. Yeah, I kind of like that. So the H2 and the H3, we're going to make those white. Let's go back. VS Code. I'm going to flip this to an H2. Leave that as an H3. How would I get that style? How would I apply that color tag to this H2?
Has to go in CSS, doesn't it?
To go in the CSS? Good point. There's two ways that I could go about it. Which should I?
So you can do it inline or external? Because I was gonna, yeah, you can just style it in the H2 tag.
Okay, let's do inline. What do I need to do? What property do I need to set?
Style equals.
Style equals color white. Okay, go back, refresh. This looks good, right? Yeah, it's good enough. Okay, so did a little bit of work. Let's go back into VS Code. Whoops, deleted my file. All right, so I deleted my file. I obviously want my index.html because I want to be able to work on my code, right? So I go back to GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop is like, whoa, you're trying to delete this file. And I can go in here and click discard changes. Because I don't want to delete that file. I want to get that file back.
Okay.
My index.html is back. I saved it.
Okay, thank you for that.
But the problem is I didn't commit, right? I didn't save my changes after I inlined those styles on the H1 and the H3. So now it's back to this being an H1 and this being an H3. I'm missing that CSS work that I added. Now, had I gone and done this, style equals color white. Style equals color white. Had I made those changes, oops.
The second style is spelled wrong.
Oh, thank you. All right. Had I gone and made a commit, so updating the CSS, commit to main, push. Cool. Had I made a commit before the file had gotten erased, so now I'm going to delete that. Come back in here. GitHub just noticed that the file got destroyed. So I'm going to discard the change that destroyed the file. Because I made a commit, the file is restored and my CSS is still there. So having made that commit helped me keep that progress after the file was destroyed. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So bringing this back to what Latonia and I were agreeing on, it's really nice to make big or to make commits that are focused on a task. So if my task was to update the front page of my blog or my portfolio and fix the CSS styles, that would have been a great commit to have delineated where I started writing the code and where I went and took the snapshot, where I went and made the commit. But it's entirely on you when you want to make commits. If you're nervous about losing files or not sure what kind of changes that you're making on your code, you might lean more towards making commits more frequently, taking those snapshots more frequently. Okay, so that's scenario one. You've deleted some files, but you didn't commit. Let's talk about the other scenario where you deleted some files, but you did commit. And there are a couple slides here that talk about what we just covered. Let's move forward to the did commit scenario. Okay, so let's talk about what happens if you make some changes and then you continue working for a while, and then you realize that those changes, those files got deleted and you need to roll back. So let's create a situation here. So let's say that I am, I want to recover some code. So let's say that I delete this for right now. Or rather, I delete a whole bunch of stuff. Because I'm thinking that I don't like these sections that are at the top of my portfolio. So I'm going to just delete some code here. Okay. Reopen this. Okay, so now my portfolio it looks a bit different. It's just the contact form. All of that top section is missing. I'm trying to take my portfolio and condense it down a little bit, so it's just the contact and the portfolio here. Right, so I like how this looks. Maybe actually I will add a little bit of spacing because it kind of seems a little wonky at the top. Just having this right here, maybe I want a little space up here. Does anybody know how I could insert some space here?
Started padding or margin. I get them confused.
Margin. Padding is if you're inside.
Okay, thank you.
So margin.
Margin top.
Yeah. 10. How's that look?
It's better.
A little better. Okay. So I will go and first off, I'm going to make a commit for getting rid of the top section. So I don't like the top section. Commit that. All right. And then how would I go about adding that margin top to my code? So notice here when we were playing around with this in the inspect editor, I was adding it to this div class container.
Oh crap. Are we still doing inline CSS? Because I'm gonna say make a class and call it.
We have a class here.
Right. And the margin top is for the container, right? Yes.
This is where we were applying it.
Oh, you can do a style and then put margin top.
I could inline a style, right? Is that what you're talking about right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could inline a style. Is there anything that stops me from having an inline style and a class?
An ID. Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
No, I don't think that there is anything that prevents you. I don't think that it's great practice. I think that because we already have a CSS class here, container, I think that it might make more sense to put the styling on that CSS class. Does that make sense to other people?
So within the container style, do margin top, is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay,
Do you think that's wrong?
so you're not going to CSS, so you're not going to your style sheet at all, to your CSS, your style.css at all? You're focusing on this, correct? If I'm understanding that correct?
I'm focusing on the container class. Where is the container class defined?
In index.html? Oh, I mean in style.css?
Exactly. So I'm going to go hop over to style.css and find the container class.
It's probably at the top.
Uh-oh. Folks, we got a problem here.
It might be because Bootstrap
you guys
uses
better.
a container.
Oh,
Bootstrap
this is
uses a
Bootstrap.
container class separately, yeah. So it's already just part of the Bootstrap syntax.
Oh man, I really thought we had something on Max here. Okay.
Bootstrap, yeah.
Okay, so let's call this, this isn't just a container class. Let's also add a portfolio container. So has Max already talked to you about multiple classes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go down here. Portfolio container. And we said margin top was 10. Refresh. Cool. And it's picking up margin top from our style. Great. All right. Now back to, after that fun diversion into CSS, let's go back to the example. So I've got another commit here. This looks good. Styles.css also changed. This funny little marker right here is just saying that there's no new line at the end of the file. So if I go back down to style CSS, hit enter. There we go. The marker goes away. So I have a commit. I have some changes here. I made the change to index.html. I made the change to style.css. I'm going to say something like fixing the margin on the upper element of the homepage. Commit, push. All right.
Hey, Nate, I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Latonia. So that might be a minor thing, but why is it significant to have that extra line at the bottom of the file?
Is it a trick question?
No, it's not. One of my mentors actually told me, it's like, it's general practice that you just leave an extra line at the bottom of your files, but I just never really understood why.
I never really understood either. I've had some people that are extremely bothered by seeing that marker.
They
now, I've had people that have written me up, literally written me up on the job for not having that. Which spoiler alert, red flags if you're working at a company that does that. But anyways, let me ask the class. Is there any difference in how the CSS is loaded and run in the browser if there's an extra line there or not?
Max told us it was something along the lines of just having it easier for us to read, because the computer will read it either way. It's just a matter of us understanding it. But in regards to this extra line stuff, I don't really see a major difference. I read the code fine still.
I'm the same way. I've run into very few people that have felt strongly about the need of that. And so just to be pedantic here, I'm going to ask the same question in the index.html. I've removed the new line at the end of the file. Does anyone feel like the code is going to execute differently? No, right.
I think the bad question is if we read it all the same, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be cognizant of 100% of all of the people, then put a new line. If you don't care, then I don't know. You do you. It's such a small thing, but anyways, all right. So scenario here is we've made some changes to our code, and all of a sudden I realized, oh shoot, I really didn't want to lose all of that stuff at the top. So all of that code that was up here that I got rid of before, I want that back. I don't want to just have the contact and the portfolio there. So how could I get that code back without necessarily going and stealing back from Max? What if I wanted to find my code that I deleted?
Go to history.
History, exactly. Yep. So in GitHub Desktop, there's a tab over here called History. If you click on that, these are all of the changes, all of the commits that you've made in your repository. So right here, the most recent commit I made was fixing the margin. So this change right here. If I want to, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can see how those summaries are coming in handy now. You can just go through and just pick whatever you describe.
Yeah, exactly. Like it has taken me no time to find the commit that is talking about deleting that top section, because I wrote a commit message saying I don't like the top section. So I want to get this code back. Now, you might be tempted to just, and there's nothing really wrong with doing this. You can just take this code, come back, paste it. You can totally do this and move on with your life. But if you want to do it even easier and save yourself the copy and paste, you can just click on the section, click revert changes and commit. Okay, and now we have a merge conflict. I should have picked a more trivial example here, but we're just going to roll with it. So it's saying that we found some conflicts while trying to merge. Please resolve the conflicts and commit the changes. So I'm going to show you all what a merge conflict looks like. So we're going to go back to our code. Okay, so this is where Git is confused because it doesn't know how to reconcile the changes that we made, specifically the fact that we added this portfolio container. It doesn't understand how to reconcile that with the code that was there before. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we as the humans need to instruct the dumb computer how to reconcile and merge these two changes. And so to do that, Git puts these special tags in the code to help you understand what is what here. So I'm going to delete these special tags. So I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of this. And get rid of that. Okay. So now I'm left with a body, two body tags, which is this valid HTML?
No.
Why is it not valid?
I don't see a closing tag for that body. Plus, why do you have two whole different bodies? Like I thought body is supposed to fit like everything, you know?
Right. Body is you are only allowed to have one body, and it doesn't have a closing tag, so it's not valid. So what we want to do is get rid of the body, and then we're going to update the div because we added the margin top. Okay. So now I have the code for both. I have the code that I most recently wrote, and I have my old code in this file. If I go back to GitHub Desktop, click on changes, now we can see that all I've done is add in the code that was deleted. And now I can make a commit. I really did want my top section back. I can type. There we go. Commit, push. All right. Thoughts, questions? Is anybody sold on Git yet?
Completely.
Yeah, looking forward to implementing that.
Okay.
Quick question, why does your time say 5:25? Are you at a different time zone?
I'm in Montana. I'm the one instructor that's a couple time zones away from you. Okay, let's get back to it. Well, we've talked about the two different kind of situations that you could run into and how Git can save you. Let's talk about the everything is awful going nuclear option, and this has happened to me before, so I'm going to cover this real quick. The everything is awful situation is something kind of like this. You're in VS Code, and let's say that you've deleted all of your files, and let's say that you also have added a bunch of files, and gosh, how can we make this even worse? Let's go into documents. And you have a bunch of crazy files, and make dir-p 1ab. And you have, let's say you have, you have crazy folders and files in those folders, and things are just terrible. You don't really know what's going on with your project. And if you go into GitHub Desktop, you look at GitHub Desktop, and this doesn't make any sense to you because you're like, what the heck are these files or these folders? Everything is just awful, and I need to get back to a sane state where I can work on my code. So there is a going nuclear option, and I'm going to show that real quick. All the steps are here, so just sit back and enjoy the show for this one. Hopefully you don't ever have to do this, but it's here if you ever need it. So the going nuclear option is everything is terrible and you don't know what's going on in GitHub Desktop and you just want to get back to your code. So the first step is if there's anything in here that you don't have pushed up to github.com, that you haven't taken a snapshot of and pushed up to GitHub, if there's any of that in here, just open this up in Finder and copy it to somewhere else on your computer. So for example, I'm going to open up this folder in Finder, and like the feedback.html. I'm just going to copy that because I know that's good HTML. I'm going to copy that and put that on my desktop just to be safe. So the first step of everything is terrible, going nuclear, I need to get back to a known working state. The first step is to copy and salvage what you can. Just in case things can't be recovered, grab what you can and put it somewhere safe. Then the next step is to just delete what you have currently in GitHub Desktop. Okay, so to delete, you simply go up here into the repo picker, right-click the repository, and hit remove. There is this checkbox, also move this to the trash. You'll want to select that. So now we've deleted the copy of portfolio code that I had on my machine. Now we're going to just re-add it. So clone repository. Mine was called deluxe.github.io. Clone. Okay. And now if I hit show in Finder, my code is back. Now, granted, I'm on the most recent snapshot that I pushed up to GitHub. So any changes that I made that I hadn't committed and pushed, those are unfortunately lost, unless I was able to snag them, like this feedback.html that I was able to salvage. So I'm going to grab that and bring it back. It is the same copy of feedback.html, so it's not going to show up here in my changes. But that is how you would save and get your code back in the case of, you know, everything is awful and you just need to get back to square one.
So pretty
Questions?
much save the code onto another, not to save the code, but save the files into another file on your desktop. Then go to your repository, remove that.
Right.
And then once you have that, go to add filter, add, put your repository or the repository you were working on, and then just clone it.
Just reclone it. Yep. Again, clone is one of those Git terms like repo, like commit. Clone is one of those Git terms, which just means github.com onto my computer.
Gotcha.
Okay. And
Just
again,
as
I hope,
long-
go ahead.
Sorry, just as long as you don't commit to the changes and then you don't push to origin, then you should be good. What I mean by that is if let's say you had all like that went nuclear, right? And then but you committed to it and then you push to origin, then you won't be able to get those back because they're already onto GitHub.
Well, if things are awful and then you go ahead and commit and push, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So if things are awful and you commit and push, we would then go back to this situation where you did something, you deleted some files, and then you committed. In that case, we would go to the history tab
And then
and
just
we
redo
would,
it.
right.
Gotcha.
From there, we would revert, right.
Gotcha. Okay. Just making sure I'm understanding of
Totally.
connecting the dots.
And that brings up a good point. There is really never a disadvantage to committing and pushing, even if you think you're in a situation where things are awful. Because if you're in a situation where things are awful, the worst thing that could possibly happen is you push a change or you push a commit, a snapshot that still has some of your valid code, that still has things that you can save. So there's really never a disadvantage to committing and pushing, if in doubt. Okay.
Cool.
And then I just got, go ahead.
There's a joke somewhere in there about marriage. If in doubt, commit.
Yeah, I used to have a fire escape graphic on here that in case of fire, commit and then leave the building. I think it's on here somewhere. I don't know. Okay. And then lastly, I wanted to mention file layouts because this is something that I've seen people kind of struggle with a little bit from cohort to cohort. And I'm going to pick on you, Karen, just because you're the first person that I've seen come across this. And this is not any fault of yours, but I'm just going to pick on you for a minute.
Oh no, did I do something wrong?
No, you didn't. You made a great example. In Karen's example, or sorry, when we were working on Karen's machine earlier at the beginning of class, did anybody notice that there was a folder at the top of that repo that contained the index.html and the styles.css? So with Git repos, they tend to prefer that you put the index.html, the styles.css at the root of the repo. So the first thing you see when you go into the repository is a list of the files. Now that doesn't mean, like we talked about yesterday, that doesn't mean that you can't have subfolders, but try to prefer that your GitHub repositories have some files at the top and then they have subfolders within it. Try to stay away from doing fancy nesting and putting things inside of other folders if possible. Okay. So now we're at the point where I want to do just a little bit of behind the scenes because to help reinforce a little bit of the terminology that we covered. Go ahead.
Could you show us an example for the file thing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe I could just share my screen.
No, your stuff is good now. Your stuff is good. We got you all squared away.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Can I just add, that's something that we all do as new coders. I remember Nate helping us with deploys, and we all had these nested folders thinking we were doing a great job because it's neat and tidy. And it really does throw the program off. Like, it's just so much helpful not to have all the nested, so you're not alone at all.
Thank you. Now I can sleep sweetly tonight.
So is nesting like having a folder and then a folder and a folder and then having files in those folders? Oh crap.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to.
Yeah, so let me open up. Oh shoot, this is gone. Yeah, so this is the folder within a folder within a folder. This is what we're trying to avoid, is deeply nested folder hierarchies. The example that I've got for you is, so take this, I don't want any of these changes. I'm going to discard all of them. All right, I'm going to open up Finder, look at my code, and delete that. Okay, so this is kind of the ideal layout. We have the folder, the deluxe.github.io. This is the special folder that gets created for me on my computer when I go in and click clone repository. This is the special folder that gets created on my computer to put the code into. And just notice that as soon as we open this folder, get rid of that. As soon as I open Finder, you can see there's an index.html, style.css right there. What we wouldn't want to have is something like this. Or even worse. Which you might think that this makes sense because, okay, I've got a folder called code. Now I can have a folder called notes, and I can put the notes in that I've been taking during class. But the problem is that this is no longer about the code, which the GitHub repository is about the code. The code is kind of front and center. It's the star of the show here. So if you do keep notes, by all means, put them wherever you want on your desktop. But if we're working on our code, we're trying to keep that code front and center in our repo. So I'm going to bring that back up here to the top and move that to the trash. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps a lot because that's literally how my laptop looks. So after class, yeah, I'd like you to check that out.
Sure. Yep. And if anybody wants help, by all means, feel free to ask.
How would you suggest we separate files then? Like,
good question.
I'd be like, okay, what project is that?
Yeah, good question. The way that you separate it is by creating a bunch of repos. So like right now, I only have one repo and it's dedicated to my portfolio. It's my deluxe.github.io. This is my portfolio. If I wanted to have another one, say for the, what's another project that you guys have worked on?
Netflix.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Netflix.
Netflix. Okay. I'm going to create a new repository. I'm going to call it Netflix. Initialize with a README. Great. Click the publish repository. And I'm going to uncheck the keep this code private. Now notice a lot of this is similar to what we did on the GitHub website when we were creating our portfolio. You could do it that way too. You can create it on github.com and then clone it down to your machine, or you can make it directly through the GitHub desktop. Either work. I'm just showing how to do it through GitHub desktop.
A quick question: if you do it through the GitHub desktop, will it show up in your website, in your GitHub account?
Absolutely. Now notice right now, if I go to my repositories, notice right now that I don't have a repo called Netflix. It's not until I hit the publish repository. As soon as I do that, refresh,
Gotcha.
Here's an empty Netflix. So to answer the question of how would you go about structuring your folders and your files, the answer is to create repos for each of the projects that you work on. And so now I have my portfolio here and I have my Netflix here. If I wanted to start hacking on my Netflix, open in VS Code, let's create a index.html.
Does each repository have its own file in Finder?
Each repository has its own folder in Finder.
Okay.
So I'm adding some. Now you guys have me. Now you guys have me worried. I'm going to be adding new lines at the end because I'm scared of judgment. Save. Make sure that goes away.
Yeah, we could write you up.
Yeah, somebody's gonna report me to the. Okay, there we go. Whew, now it's out. Okay. Okay, great. Adding my Netflix code. Commit, push. There we go. To point out where those special folders are created. So you get a special folder on your computer every time you create a repository on GitHub to show where those are. They are inside of a folder called GitHub, inside of a folder, inside of your documents folder. So if you go to your user/documents/GitHub, there's a special folder created in here when you clone a repo down. So that's where they are in Finder.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, I know that it's time consuming to create these repositories, to clone them down, to move the code that you've already written from somewhere on your computer into these folders. I know that that's an investment in time when you're getting started. I know that's an investment, and I'm not making light of it. But I promise you, if you can get in the habit of moving your development into these special folders and getting used to doing GitHub and using Git, you will be much further ahead. Also, a lot of interviewers will ask you questions about Git. I know Latonia will be able to attest to that, but a lot of the interviewers will expect you to have some Git knowledge. Okay, so quick break while I talk about some of the terminology that we've covered already, just to kind of help drill a few of these concepts. So the repo is a special folder on your computer that's linked to a special location on GitHub. So again, in the example that we just created, the Netflix repository is a place on github.com, but it's also a special folder on my computer. If I show in Finder, these two things are linked. Every time I push to origin, the code that I've committed here ends up on github.com. And the benefit of that is multiple people can be developing on the repo and pushing code all at the same time, using different branches, and we can get into that. Already kind of mentioned this, but make sure that the changes when you're working on your code, you're doing it inside of that special folder. A lot of people will have two copies. They'll have moved their code from where they were working on it previously. They'll have moved it into the special folder, but they'll keep opening the old folder in VS Code, or they'll have an old VS Code window open. So make sure when you're working on your GitHub repositories, make sure that you have the right VS Code window open. And again, commits are bundles of changes. They could be of any size. You decide what goes into a commit. You decide the code that you put into it. They are pushed up to GitHub, and you send them to GitHub using an action called pushing. And then just an analogy, I feel like everybody here is pretty comfortable with this so far, but if you're used to Google Docs kind of has the same sort of paradigm where, if I can blow this up any, oops. Google Docs kind of has the same paradigm where you can revert your history, and for the folks that are familiar with Google Docs, that's the same kind of analogy. Okay. Oh yeah, here's the cutesy graphic that I had. All right, so that's it for terminology. Deploys. So we're going to talk quite a bit more about this tomorrow, but we can go ahead and talk a little bit about making our first deploy tonight. So I'm going to start off by asking, why do we want to deploy our code?
So people can see it and know how awesome we are.
Yeah.
Be able to share
To be able to share it, right? So far, we've been running our code on our machines. Does anybody have any, can anybody think of any cons about running it on our machine?
Gatorade.
Does deploying have anything to do
Gatorade,
with
yeah.
testing?
Testing, yeah. So far, where has all the testing occurred though?
Right, in the editors, like VS Code and whatnot.
Right, you've been doing all of your testing, you've been doing all of your validation on your laptop. In general, we don't want to do a lot of testing when we deploy. We typically want to have all the testing done beforehand, and then we push up what we know works as part of our deploy. But I'm thinking of just practicalities here. Like, why can't we run our websites off of our Mac?
It'll slow it down.
Just slow it down. Keep going. What do you mean by that?
If multiple people on the internet are trying to access it, it's pulling, the resources off of our computer, and I would imagine affecting our bandwidth also to some degree.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because there's a couple things that you're pointing out. The first one is resources. So let's say that somebody develops the next cool social app, like the next Tinder or something. And you decide, okay, I'm done building this app. I want to run some ads. Let's say I'm going to run some ads to advertise my new app. What would happen if you ran your app, let's say, in the middle of the Super Bowl?
Your site would crash.
Right. You would have hundreds of thousands, millions of people trying to reach your laptop, trying to log into the website running on your laptop. About how many people do you think your laptop would be capable of serving? Rough estimate.
3 to 5
figures.
Say what? 3
I would
to
say
5?
3 to 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say
3 to
definitely not hundreds of thousands.
3 to 5. Well, I think you're selling your Mac a little short. I mean, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, they don't have fans anymore, so you wouldn't have the thermal. But 3 to 5, I think, is a little low. I think you could get away with a couple hundred people pretty easily. Once we're talking about a couple thousand people, though, all at the same time trying to hit your machine, yeah, your Mac's gonna fall over pretty quick. So that's kind of the first practical consideration there. What's the other practical consideration about? Can anybody else think of why we shouldn't run our Mac? What problem the Mac may cause?
I would think security issues.
Yeah.
Security issues. That's a really good one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Macs aren't designed to host software. They're meant to be general purpose computing devices, which means that you have lots of ports that are open by default, which means you have lots of things, if for good reason, right? Like you need ports open to be able to talk to printers. You need ports open to be able to discover, to do AirDrop, for all those things. Would you want to have a computer with AirDrop enabled, publicly accessible on the internet? Probably not. They're not designed to be publicly accessible. what happens when you shut the lid on your Mac?
Oh, yeah. So that's where the servers come in to make sure
Yeah,
things are.
exactly. Like my son might come over and close the lid on my laptop. Website's down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of practical reasons. The other practicality is that I don't know about all of you, but I have really terrible internet. So I think right now I'm getting 10 megabits per second, which right now nobody in the house, I had to make sure nobody in the house was going to be streaming during classes, because literally the only thing that that bandwidth that could be used at my house is dedicated to Zoom right now. So would 10 megabits per second work for serving hundreds of thousands of people, tens of megabytes worth of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, graphics?
Yeah, no, that's definitely not gonna happen. Same situation. Like if my siblings were watching TV right now, my Zoom would be cutting out like crazy.
Yeah. So we have to just consider some of the practicalities, like not to mention the legalities of trying to host a website off of a residential Comcast line. For example, Comcast highly frowns upon people using their residential internet connection to do things like host web servers or email servers or Minecraft servers, or really any kind of server that they're not able to charge you a business internet line for. So those are just some of the practicalities. Why do we take our code and push it to the cloud? Why do we deploy it? Just because it's the convenient thing to do. It's really the only way that we can ensure that our websites are up, they're available, other people can reach them, they're secure, and we know that they'll respond within a certain amount of time. Okay. So that kind of sums up why we can't just run code on our MacBooks. Now, there is a dizzying array of people that will sell you servers. You kind of have two options for servers. You have the old school, and then I guess what you could call the new school. The new school is the companies that I kind of have listed here. The old school, you used to be able to, and you still can in certain places, but the old school, you used to be able to buy physical servers. You used to buy inside of these data centers. You used to buy, you could buy space by what was called rack space. So 1U, 2U, 3U. There's these different classifications for physical dimensions on a literal metal rack that you could buy and place a computer in, and then rent things like power, internet hookups, IT support. You could pay to have someone come over and rotate hard disk drives for you, or pay someone to come in, and there are all these kinds of services you could do in the data centers, and still do. So that was kind of the old school. The new school, the new cloud is what you see on the screen, all these different badges. Has anyone ever worked with AWS or Google Cloud, or is anybody recognizing anything they see here?
I mean, I recognize them, just never worked with any of them. I feel like Google Cloud, I feel like I'm getting that confused with Drive, like where I put my documents in my Drive or whatever, but that's about it for me.
Okay. Yeah, Google, go ahead.
I got the Microsoft Azure fundamentals certification, so I kind of learned how to work with their deployment for their programs.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Microsoft owns GitHub, so we've actually been using a lot of Microsoft's computing just with the code that we've pushed. With GitHub, the code that we pushed, the servers that are handling the commits that we send to github.com, that's actually handled by Azure on the back end. But all of these companies that are on this screen, all of them will sell you computers, will sell you servers. So just to kind of reiterate, the big advantage of renting servers from these companies is that they each kind of have this very streamlined approach for hosting your code. You don't have to worry about the physical connections to your servers. You go to one of those websites, you put in your credit card, and you tell them, I want a 18-core server with 64 gigs of RAM. I want it to have a 128 gigabyte SSD attached to it. You literally fill out a couple of boxes, and then within seconds they will spin it up. You can also do things like say, I just have this code and I want you to run it. You don't even have to know the characteristics or the specifications of the machine. You can just say, here's my code, run it. And they will figure out how to provide the right size server for you, which is what I'm alluding to on bullet point number 4. Some of these providers will automatically scale based on the demand. So in the case of the Super Bowl, for example, I keep bringing up the Super Bowl as an example because I worked at a company where this was a thing. You can set these things up so that you only have a couple of computers. I'm talking in the single digits number of computers, and then you can run an ad during the Super Bowl and all of a sudden have hundreds of thousands of people hitting your website. And some of these companies will go, oh wow, bunch of requests coming in. Let's scale up a bunch of computers, and they will instantaneously create hundreds of sometimes thousands of computers for you within seconds to meet that demand. And then as soon as the ad finishes running, as soon as the traffic starts to die down, the pool of servers will start to shut down. So some of these companies do really incredible things for you, so you don't have to think about provisioning servers.
Are we gonna touch more on this? Because every time you say servers, I'm just imagining those big brick things. Are these cloud servers? Like, I can't
Yes.
really.
Yeah, they are. We might get to the point this week of actually spinning one up. I'm hoping that nobody will actually have to touch one. But I would be more than happy to show you what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these servers. I'm not going to do a demo of running your own cloud in this talk tonight because we're getting close. But I do want to point out that there's multiple types of different clouds or different classes of servers that you could use, different types of hosting specifically. And the first category of hosting that we're going to deal with this week is called file hosting. And these are some of the different types of hosting providers. We're going to look at one specifically this week, GitHub Pages, because we've been pushing our code to GitHub. That's where our deploys are going to occur. But there are a number of other places that will host files. And file hosting is kind of the simplest form of deploys that you can do. I have these files and I want to make them available on the internet, which simply means that we need to bundle up our HTML, our CSS, and eventually our JavaScript. We need to bundle those things up and put them somewhere on the internet that other people can download. So it's kind of the simplest form of deployment that we can do. Now, I say it's simple, and I want to expand on that for a second. When someone visits your website, when someone visits your index.html and your CSS, where is the code actually running? Where is the HTML and the CSS code actually being executed? Who is doing, what is doing the job of running the code and processing it?
Browser? No.
Well,
The browser. The browser is, right? Because when you go and visit a website, you're downloading the HTML, the raw files. It's like you're going to Google Drive and you're downloading the files, and then your browser is executing the instructions, right?
Yes.
So that's really as simple of hosting as it can get. You know, we put this out on the internet, people download it, and then their computers run it. So when we're talking about file hosting, we're talking about something pretty simple. We're talking about very simple servers, very simple deployments that just put the files out there, and then literally all the servers do is they handle requests coming in, asking for the files, and sending the files back to the person that's requesting it. So this is kind of the simplest sort of hosting that can be done. The next tier up, we're going to talk about a little bit more in a couple months as you start to gain knowledge of JavaScript, because there's going to be a point in time where you start writing backend code. And at that point, backend code doesn't execute in the browser. Backend code needs servers to run on. And so there's a second class of hosting called application hosting. So you think of file hosting as the simplest, application hosting is the next step in that tier. Applications actually run your backend code. And I have some graphics to get into that a little bit, but at this point, we're gonna skip over this a little bit. Container hosting is the next thing. Again, I'm going to kind of skip over this, but I do just want to mention that container hosting is exactly how it sounds. Instead of static files and instead of applications, this is where you start to build what are known as containers. And containers are like mini operating systems. They have everything baked into them, and it's kind of like having a complete backup of a computer and putting that onto the cloud. So you kind of are building on a bit more complex software. And then finally, at the very I guess bottom of the hierarchy here is just server hosting. And this is what I was originally describing, where you could go in and say, I want to have a box with these specifications, these physical attributes, and any of these companies will say, yep, okay, just give me the credit card and I'll spin that up for you right now. And for funsies, this is just for fun. I'm going to look up the AWS EC2 price list, on-demand pricing. Here we go. This is just to illustrate the kinds of things that AWS, so this is one of the companies on that list, just to illustrate the kinds of things that you can buy with enough money. So AWS will sell you all kinds of stuff. So right here, we have this chart that's talking about the hourly rate for renting these servers. So here we can rent a server with just one CPU core and 2 gigs of memory for about 2 cents an hour. And it actually gets even cheaper than that. There is a penny an hour will get you 2 CPU cores and 1 gig of RAM. So things can get pretty cheap. On the other end of the spectrum, if you got a whole lot of money, you can spend close to $109 an hour to get a 448 core CPU with 12,000 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
What would that be used for?
My only thought is like training machine learning models. Like you need to pull in huge amounts of data. Like I'm talking like self-driving cars, where you're trying to build a model that can predict, like based on all of the different paths that a car has driven, all of that data, compute an optimal model. Those sorts of problems are the situations where you would want a ton of memory, I think.
A question. I don't know if this has to do with anything, but like I've seen jokes and stuff where it's like when you forgot to turn off an instance while using a Amazon web server or whatever. I'm just like, what does that mean? What's an instant? Is it a JavaScript thing or what's happening there?
No, it's literally this. These are instances. So I've actually had the same thing happen where I had not made my AWS account secure enough, and overnight I had a hacker get into, not really a hacker, that's being too kind. I had someone get into my AWS account, and the person spun up like 12 GPU enabled. So you can rent servers that have video cards attached. So the hacker rented 12 GPU enabled servers, big servers, and just started Bitcoin mining on my account. And I got an email, of course, in the morning from AWS, and it was for thousands of dollars. I mean, it was an insane. It made my stomach drop.
Stomach drop too. God damn. All that for some Bitcoin.
Thousands of dollars. So of course, I'm immediately on the phone with AWS support, and they waived all the charges. They said next time, make sure you have two-factor enabled and revoke your access credentials. But they dropped all the charges. So
Two-factor aside, I feel like it should be more secure. I mean, I don't know if it was a problem on your end, if it was like your fault or whatever, but like just in general, I feel like it should just be more secure. Like I don't think two-factor is enough.
Yeah, and there are controls in place. So one of the controls is that new users of these accounts, they will impose limits for how many kinds of servers and how much you can rent at a time. The problem is I'm a power user of AWS, so I will call them up and say, I need my limit increased. So of course I had done that. So my account was kind of a quote power user, and yeah, anyways, those limits do exist. They do exist.
I hope that
thank you all for indulging me while I kind of geek out about the AWS stuff. That I want to go ahead and call it here because we're going to get into deploys next, and I want to kind of save that for tomorrow so we can start fresh on deploys. If this interests anybody, again, feel free to come to office hours, and I'm more than happy to go deeper into detail about server hosting. This is my whole life, so this is the stuff that I could speak to pretty well. Tomorrow, though, we're going to talk about GitHub pages. Does anybody have any questions before we break for tonight? Thoughts, opinions, criticisms, jokes?
What's your job title? I just want to know that out of curiosity.
I'm a site reliability engineer, which is just a fancy way of saying I make sure things are working.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Anybody else have questions, thoughts? Is anybody gonna go out and try to buy a Raspberry Pi?
Oh, yes.
I'm already looking at one right now.
I already have the
Okay.
website up.
There was a shortage. Be careful. There is a supply shortage, so there's people scalping. You should not pay more than like $60 max for one of these. Just be aware.
70, 35.
Gotta love the scalpers.
Mm.
They do that for freaking whatchamacallit, gaming PCs, trying to get RTXs and whatnot. Oh my gosh, it's not even worth it.
It's getting better. It's getting better slowly. Cool. Well, if that's it, go ahead and call it here for tonight. Thank you all for coming, and see all of you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Latonia.
Have a good night.
Have a nice night.
Good night, folks. I think, Nate, someone mentioned having you peek at their file structure. I could be misremembering, but
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I'm about to switch to my laptop with the stuff. Zoom. So annoying. I'm just logging into Zoom real quick.
Cool. Naija, I didn't hear from you tonight.
Yeah, I'm here. My connection, I kept getting lost.
Did you get like connection lost, or did you get lost in the stuff recovered?
Oh, just connection loss. I didn't get lost.
Okay. Okay, great.
Is class over already?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Your class is over.
Okay. See you guys tomorrow.
See ya.
Do you see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay. Finder. Desktop. Okay, so for example, I don't know, what should I use an example? Okay, yeah, my menu project, something I do. So I think this is, I fit the description where everything is just nested instead of having it flat out, I guess. So how do I go
So hop
about
back in there. Go
What?
into CSS,
CSS
drag test CSS, drag it to the root.
to the root being here?
And then HTML, the same
For
thing.
everything else too?
Mhm.
I don't have anything in JavaScript, honestly, not now. So that was just
And then images you can keep the same. Like I think it's a pretty good idea to have a folder if you've got a lot of images and throw those in there. But now that you have this kind of flattened, now that you have this kind of flattened, menu project would be a great repo on GitHub.
It's a repo. It's already there. It was like my first repo ever.
It's probably not though.
Are
you sure?
Positive. Like I set up a GitHub so long ago. Boop. Let me go on to the website.
I don't doubt that you have a repo. I'm thinking that that we probably need to move stuff into it. Like if you click on, yeah, okay. Oh, see, this is great. This is flat. Index.html at the top. This is great. Okay. So go back to GitHub desktop. Yeah, click show in Finder.
You lost me. Where I see show in Finder.
Show in Finder is that middle button.
Right here.
So see, this is somewhere else. So keep this window open, and then behind you. Yeah, behind you, you've got this. So this is what I was talking about, where you would have the special folder for your repo, GitHub special folder, and then you've got this other folder that you're currently looking at right now, where this is just a regular folder. It's not a special folder tracked by GitHub. So to get things in the right spot, grab what you've got in this folder, not the folder itself, but grab the things in it, including the images if you want that.
I was just gonna ask, can I grab the images folder? But yeah.
Totally, yeah. Grab that, drag it over to the bottom one.
This right here?
To the right, put it in where the, right there.
Right here?
Right, right there, And then replace if you, replace. Okay. Now if you go back to GitHub desktop, it's gonna say new stuff is added.
Oh, that's what you meant. My only question is, this right here is a little confusing. So do I just go to the images folder, or is it?
It's up to you. It's personal preference. If you like having the favicon sitting at the root, that's cool. If you want to have an images folder, I think that images folder makes sense because you're probably gonna have a lot of images. But at this point, what I would do, just to make sure you don't get tripped up, is back in that other Finder window where you have the empty menu project folder, I would delete that so you don't accidentally go
Gotcha.
back to it, and then rinse and repeat for any of the other folders that you have there. I would encourage you to slowly migrate those into the special GitHub folders and create repos as you see fit.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And then don't forget to commit, because it looks like you added those files.
Well, okay, so I didn't edit any code. So do I commit even if I just like add files or remove them?
It's not that you added any code, it's that GitHub didn't know about the code. GitHub didn't know about that latest code. If you share your screen one more time. Yeah, notice how GitHub thinks that you've added a favicon, you've added a test.css, and it thinks that you've changed the index.html. Right, do you see that?
Yep. Like the yellow, I'm assuming.
Right. So GitHub doesn't know about these changes yet. So I would go ahead and commit and push these up. Even though you didn't write any new code, you need to make sure that GitHub is synced up with these changes. GitHub has them.
I'm just gonna name it file organization, I guess.
Yeah, whatever will help you.
And this means I delete it and I can press it to recover it, right? But I don't want to recover it, so.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, just leave it as is.
And fetch origin, do you refresh? Is that a refresh thing, or because I just see those errors and I assume it's refreshing? It is.
Yeah, you don't really need to worry about fetching origin until you work with other people in a repo. For now, I just kind of ignore it.
Okay.
You could press fetch origin if you want. It won't really do anything.
It didn't do anything.
Yeah. But then behind you, you've got that GitHub window. If you refresh, you should see some stuff added. Yep, 34 seconds ago.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. All good?
Yep, all good. I'm just trying to stop screen share, but it's not letting me.
Nate, there's just one other person on our trail. I'm not sure if he has a question.
No, I'm just listening in case I learned something new.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Cool.
That's all.
I'm all good here, Nate.
That's plenty. What'd you say, Schneider?
I said I was all good. That's really the file organization thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, see y'all later. Have a good night.
Good night.